What's going on, folks? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review Ferrari Boyz by Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka Flame. Now, basically, this project came out in the summer of 2011, and it was kind of the next release from Waka Flocka, and this is kind of the album that Gucci Mane dropped in 2011 after his maybe not lackluster, but kind of underperforming the Appeal album, and this is kind of what they were up to because Waka Flocka was the next person to blow up on Gucci Mane's Brick Squad label, and his Waka Flocka's Flockabelly album did pretty outstanding. Got 4 singles, had a lot of street singles and that type of stuff. This had a lot of street appeal towards it. And in terms of like all the Drake and Kanye West type rappers that were popular around the late 2010 2011 era, Waka Flocka was extremely refreshing. So that was kind of the concept. So Gucci Mane did not appear at all on Flockabelly from 2010, and Waka Flocka was not on Gucci Mane's The Appeal album, so it was kind of like what happened to all the chemistry. They're on the same label and stuff, and so basically they had a surprise album that came out in 2011, and this is kind of the concept about it. Now, this is a pretty exceptional album. I mean, initially when I listened to this project in the past, I was not as big a fan of it as I am recently because this is about the first time I've listened to the whole album in a while. But it is packed to the gills with just full of strip club cuts, full of dance club cuts, a few vanilla club cuts. This overall bolsterous kind of outbreak of just pandemonium like movement towards it. That this is a great feeling. These guys were definitely Waka Flocka's pretty large party animal, and Gucci Mane's just a crazy individual. So it just kind of wound up kind of being, or this concept just seen in the spur of like 15 songs because I'm reviewing the deluxe edition, and this was pretty much absolute craziness to kind of get this. I feel like this is, I mean, for the other, I would have to say for the other kind of collaboration album that came out around this time, which was Watch the Throne, this is definitely more in the trenches and has a lot more strip club craziness. But I would also have to say it probably wouldn't get the accolades. Like, I feel like Watch the Throne is more Grammy material, but this project is a lot more this kind of world star hip hop, and this project is just a lot more kind of gritty and kind of this project is a lot more gritty and kind of grimy than like some of the stuff that probably could be suited for like the rap accolades. But I don't care. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, to me this is a better album than some of the stuff that wins the awards half the time. I just feel like it's just that consolidated, packed to the gills with plenty of good beats and good moments. The guests are pretty awesome. Some of them are have resurfaced from Waka Flocka's Flockavelli album. Slim Duncan makes a couple attempts at breaking even as far as him possibly. I mean, originally back in 2011, he was probably going to be the next one to drop an album, but that just kind of happens to be the concept just to get some of this. Apparently, there was even like some Lex Luger beats on here, which would have been pretty cool. I'm going to see if that actually happened. No, it didn't look like it. But just to kind of saying stuff like, I mean, it's just basically like a second dose of Waka Flocka because Waka is basically just on like his reserve tank and extra kind of energy from Flockavelli, considering it had been less than a year by the time this project came out from Flockavelli. And Gucci Mane. This, he was kind of doing stuff in 2011. He did another album called The Return of Mr. Zone 6, but this is just kind of the concept of it. So it's interesting kind of get it. There were 2 singles off this project, one of which you may not know about entirely, but it said on Wikipedia, it says the only single was She Be Putting On. I know that they dropped a music video for that song, but I'm going to talk about the first, like, I think there was like a promo single or like a street single or something called Ferrari Boyz, so I'll go ahead and talk about that. Yeah, I mean, this song, Ferrari Boyz, really feels like a strip club type song. And in like the first verse, it kind of reminds me of like Racks on Racks somewhat, or reminds me of something Future would do back in 2011. But in the second verse, where Waka Flocka's verse kind of comes in, it kind of feels more like kind of this like escaping kind of club cut, where it just kind of, it's a great song. I would have to say it's just, I can see it being like a promotional single and a street single and stuff, but it just kind of has like this looming kind of energy towards it. It just kind of makes it a lot more of like a pretty insidious song. And this is kind of the concept about it is like Gucci Mane, this is where he was doing like all these type songs where he was stepping out and he wasn't quite as homely as such, and it really kind of shows that he just was having a pretty active life, and a lot of these songs translated into being a lot of fun. And Waka Flocka was just crazy too. So this is kind of the concept about it, is to kind of get that pretty this high energy, high octane kind of song. Should give you goosebumps, should make you really energized and stuff. This whole album is just like a shot in the arm. It just feels like you drank like 4 or 5 Red Bulls, something like that. This is pure energy for the most part. It's just, even if they're not as crazy as like Old Dirty Bastard and like uh people like that, this is still quite the jolt of energy for an album. So but I feel like She Be Putting On is the second single, and this is a really nice song. I definitely would have liked to have seen more singles like this put out, but from these guys, it's too bad that Gucci and Waka Flocka didn't collaborate much after this album. They kind of got into a beef and stuff. It's because all three of these guys, Gucci Mane, Waka Flocka Flame, and Slim Duncan, this was like a stock song. I'm really surprised that this song didn't chart better. I mean, I can see this kind of being like a street single. They probably should have hooked up with someone like Trey Songz or like some other hook singer. I can't think of who would have been popular in like 2011. I would have definitely said like Trey Songz would have worked for that time. Some other singer, some R&B singer that was kind of popular around that time probably would have worked extremely well, like Neo or something like that. I would have definitely said would have been a nice touch to kind of gotten on here, because this album is pretty street the whole way through. It doesn't even try to kind of have like the crossover type songs. This is basically the crossover song. This is Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka's attempt at trying to make something for the airwaves and that type stuff, and it just isn't like a mainstream rap kind of song. It's a street single, and that's kind of the concept about it. It really comes off to me as like a just stock kind of thorough, like when I say vanilla club song time, sometimes I feel like this is like a vanilla strip club type song. It just feels like a stock and vanilla strip club type beat on there, and talks about some chick that's independent. This song kind of talks about a chick that pays all her bills and is independent and that type stuff. And I just would have to say, like, it is pretty effective as far as that kind of goes. But this is about as mainstream as it kind of gets. I really do feel like this is just kind of like a stock strip club type song, vanilla strip club. And I would have to say, like, but this is about as mainstream as it gets. I just feel like this whole album is a crazy project, but it's kind of on like the valve of like hardcore in terms of like the genre that it's in. That's fine, really. Most of the guests, or pretty much all the guests on here, are like kind of more like in the trenches kind of rappers, apart from 2 Chainz, who on this album goes by Titty Boy because that was still his moniker at the time. But 2 Chainz is about the most notable guest feature on here, apart from Slim Duncan, who was probably the biggest of like all of Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka's buddies who are on here. That just kind of happens to be the concept, but it is a good song. I like the rock kind of the rock feel and like the chorus part of the song and that type of stuff. This really kind of turns out to be a stylish kind of just street single that has some edge to it, and that's kind of the concept. So the rest of this album, I'm gonna go ahead and break it down for you. I'll tell you the 12 songs out of 15. I would definitely recommend getting the deluxe edition. Sometimes deluxe editions don't work because not enough songs are good, but I wound up liking 12 out of the 15 total songs that you can get, so I'll recommend those to you. So they would be She Be Putting On, Stoned, I Don't See You, Mud Music, Break Her, Suicide Homicide, Pac-Man, Too Loyal, What the Hell, 15th in the First, Ferrari Boyz, the title track, and Feed Me. So to talk about some of these, there are some definite immediate club cuts on here, I would have to say. Like, I feel like Too Loyal with Slim Duncan, I Don't See You, Suicide Homicide, Pac-Man, Stoned, Feed Me. All of these just feel like, I mean, this could just be basically you just slap this album together in like a playlist or something, and the whole album slaps to the point of just kind of saying that this is just like a stock strip club anthem. I guarantee that strip clubs around Atlanta and clubs around Atlanta, nightlife around Atlanta, probably just bought this whole album, the deluxe edition, and then just put all 15 songs on here, because pretty much every song, minus like pretty much every song to me, minus like Young Niggas, In My Business, and So Many Things, come off as like a jolt in the arm of like the Atlanta nightlife. And that's just kind of the concept about it. They all kind of work A song like Mud Music really sounds like you're fucked up off of codeine. Definitely kind of having that's, I mean, it doesn't just have to be when they talk. I mean, mud is kind of a slang term for codeine, but to kind of say if you're just drunk or something, I would substitute that, and that'd be a pretty good song to have. I really feel like the sneering and kind of leery kind of production feel of Feed Me is a real kind of crunchy club number. This kind of has a more haunting feel than the rest of the productions on here. Even Suicide Homicide, which is a wicked one. 15th and the First, and 15th and the First, and What the Hell. Yeah, 15th and the First and What the Hell are kind of like some house party type songs, which I wish we would have gotten more of. One angle that Waka Flocka Flame did extremely well is just his kind of ground level popularity, where he wasn't a stranger to house parties and more things that were kind of at the house and that type stuff, like the gin and juice type songs by Snoop Dogg. I loved when Waka Flocka made a song called Grove Street Party off of Flockavelli. That was like a real brilliant kind of house party single, but there's really no songs like that on here. I mean, I like the fact there's is I like the fact that there's as much club and strip club cuts on here as just the whole album is chock full of them, but I would have liked some house party cuts too. I would have said, damn. I mean, I know someone of Gucci Mane's stature wasn't so much as going to house parties as much, but Waka Flocka kind of was, and Slim Duncan was, and some of these cats like YG Hootie and Frenchie and Woo the Kid and Ice Burgundy, I think probably would have been in the same valve as that. So I would have definitely said there needed to be, Waka could have totally pulled out a song like Grove Street Party and thrown that on here. It would have been a brilliant number just to see Gucci Mane on some house party type stuff. Would have definitely not had a problem with that. But those are some almost house part. Not as good as Grove Street Party, but 15th and the First and What the Hell kind of have that feel. Ferrari Boyz is a great club track, vanilla strip club type track. Ferrari Boyz is a great vanilla strip club type track. And Suicide Homicide is just a brilliant, that has probably one of the best beats on here. Not to say that any of these beats are really bad, but this is a really nice one. It's really kind of electric kind of feel towards it. And I Don't See You has a pretty paced energy. Pac-Man's a great one to get stoned to. That's a nice kind of just nightlife song. Stoned is a great one to get stoned to also, obviously. And there's just overall a lot of great moments on here. I just would have to say some of these just really work extremely well. Yeah, Breaker is another exhilarating one, but like I said, like this album just has like a pure shot in the arm in terms of energy. It just really works as like the effectiveness of it kind of goes, or it should get you excited. I would definitely say this should make you want to go out for like multiple nights in a row and that type of stuff. It's an easy, even if this does not have like the blue collar feel at all, I kind of feel like the concept behind it is it's the perfect album for just pulling a party out of your pocket. Like this is an album that you want to listen to if you're trying to have a great time. Even despite the fact that it's from the summer of 2011, it doesn't really show its age. I mean, I feel like this is kind of an overlooked and kind of underrated project that gets talked about. So I would definitely say look this project up, fuck with it again, and see what happens with it, because the consistency behind this project is great. This really happens to be a thing. So the social score, I'm probably gonna give like a 9 social. Like I'll go ahead and score. So the score I'm gonna give this album out of 10. I'm gonna give this album a 10 out of 10. Just because 12 out of 15 is excellent. That's pretty much like just minus 3 songs, which I'll talk about those real briefly. I didn't really like the rock type beat. I couldn't really get into the energy of Young Niggas. I didn't like the overly triumphant kind of feel of In My Business, and I wasn't really liking the kind of Wiz Khalifa knockoff type production of so many things. So those are just some of the ones. But for the most part, this album is a 10 out of 10. Just brilliant energy, plenty of stock club and ousting point, plenty of stock club and nightlife type songs for the whole night and the weekend and stuff like that. And the energy doesn't die down. And on top of that, Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka are interesting lyricists. I definitely feel like Waka Flocka is kind of underrated just because, I mean, his energy on these songs, he doesn't mind talking about things like McDonald's and IHOP and some of these type things. He's talking about pigging out. He even talks about that in She Be Putting On. So it's just kind of underneath the impression. I mean, I like the things that Waka Flocka says because he just kind of comes off as like Waka Flocka kind of comes off as like a ground level kind of street soldier that kind of has a nice energy for it, and Gucci Mane is just kind of out of character for like what he says. I mean, for the most part, the stuff that you get Gucci Mane kind of talking about is money, fast cars, women, and lean and stuff like that. But it just kind of feels like these are some songs where Gucci Mane, even despite if he talks about the same things on this project, it just kind of gets it from like a secondary and not a primary angle from his normal rhetoric that he has. So it's just interesting kind of get that from Gucci Mane just because he hadn't really put out collaboration albums before this point. So that's kind of the concept there. And the social score, like I said, I'll give a 9 just because I feel like it could have used like a single that could have broken the mainstream a little bit better. I definitely would have thrown like Trey Songs or Neo on here, something like that. It could have used like a song for the ladies that could have been like the song that was not completely street, because this is just a pretty purely street project. I would have said I would have liked like a mainstream cut and a blue collar cut also, just to see what Waka Flocka, even if Waka Flocka and Gucci Mane would never be blue or white collar, I still would like to see them kind of do some type of song that could be possibly something that could be played on like job music radio, because I feel like songs like Spotlight and Wasted by Gucci Mane, depending upon the radio of where you live in the United States or something like that, these are at least songs that you might hear on the occasions. That's just kind of the concept. I mean, if you can hear T.I., if you can hear Ludacris, you could probably hear Gucci Mane if you try hard enough. That's just kind of, there just wasn't any attempts at that. This is just a pure street album, even down to the singles. So that's just kind of the concept. But yeah, in terms of the future, like Waka Flocka has basically almost said that he basically retired, and Gucci Mane has made a new empire of music. He has like a new label and stuff. So Brick Squad Monopoly is not really around as much, but he does have some new cast and he does have a bunch of new stuff. I'm gonna get to more Gucci Mane as time goes along, but this is definitely one that I wanted to cover here.